that was like the most perfect timing I've ever done, I think.
You're getting significantly better every week.
I know. There's a little bit of patience you have to do where you let the note kind of finish and then you let it go. So
Let it
um,
go. Sorry.
let it go. Excellent. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I have been terrible about sharing the show on the socials before these things. So
That's
the
why you
fact
have me.
I appreciate you. So the fact that all of you are here, who Fairy Queen Tink, OG Viperac, Vader Llama in the chat, I appreciate you all for making the time this Monday night. But where else would you be?
What else are you doing on a Monday night other than getting ready to watch the Illumineers?
That's right.
Because we talk about everything Lorcana and everything that's going on in the world thereof. We actually had a somewhat busy week into a weekend. A lot of cool announcements. And then another CCQ that happened this weekend. It was a Canadian CCQ.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it. That one actually like slipped under the radar for me. I didn't even realize what was going on last weekend until I heard about the results. Part of it was I was so consumed with the Gantu challenge. But still, yeah, really great to see a CCQ go off in Canada. So for service those folks out there, very vibrant Lorcana community and a lot of talented players up there. So
see, like I'm always spoiled to know what's going on around that side of the world because obviously Maelstrom team captain Sailor keeps us in the loop. Sailor was there, but as someone who has won a CCQ, he decided he was just kind of take a back seat and be a spectator. It's not something he has gotten to do much this season. So he was able to go and support his friends that were local to him and see who was going to take out on top. But I mean, you were talking about the Gantu challenge because I was kind of wrapped up in CCQ news. I missed out on how that went.
Oh, you did. Oh man. All right, hold on.
I know it's like completely in the entirety of your wheelhouse.
It was. I loved it so much. Let me show you a photo here from the Gantu challenge. In fact, the organizer is in the chat right now. Vader Llama, who pulled this whole thing together. So this whole thing started because we made Gantu a meme, and then we did that Gantu challenge last set champs where Cody from Infinity and a couple other folks actually took Gantus into set champs and played them. Steven Gettle, I think, did as well. And so folks gave it a go. And then Vader said, I'm going to take this to the next level, and created stamped promos and these championship mats. Got a case donated. So there was actually like a case on the line as well. And the caveat to this tournament was everybody had to play 4 copies of every Gantu that's been printed in their deck. So 16 cards. And it was really interesting because there was really one of 2 approaches you could take. Either A, you build around the Gantus and put in cards like with alien synergy. And some people did that with like the Grand Councilwoman, the Lilos that all care about aliens. Or you just basically take a meta deck, water it down a little bit with some of these Gantus and take it in. But you're giving up 16 cards and you have to figure out which 16 cards to rotate out. And that's significant.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
I'm going to be honest. That's really cool and fun.
It was really fun.
And I mean, honestly, just completely takes the challenge that you had to the next level because you were just like, all right, if you can bring set 1 Gantu to an event and do well.
Yeah.
Like, show me. But now this is just like, can you just make Gantu work in general? And honestly, Amber Steel, I mean, I guess is the way to do it. But
it really was, honestly. Like so some people actually like brought in blue-green and just slotted him in, and that worked okay. But in this deck, it really, a lot of these cards had a home. This Gantu did well shutting down opponents' board wipes. And in the mirror, shutting down, removal actions for a turn. Big Gantu never got played, always inked. I mean, this Gantu with the 4 lore has a role to play in this deck. And even the 1-cost Gantu is a 3/3 for 1. And yes, you have to discard a card, but oftentimes in this deck, you can discard the Lilo. So like, it was, I thought it was fun. Blake in the chat said it was not fun. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
First of all, just get into the spirit of it.
Yeah. But it was a ton of fun. So some of the folks who were there are here, and yeah, this deck ended up winning out. So shout out to Kevin who took it down, and yeah, Ink Gontu, play Mulan, pitch Gontu in my nightmares, says Blake on Facebook. And the best part, Logan, was on the very last turn of the finals, the card that came out to kind of seal the deal was Dr. Hamster Veil as like the final played card. So that was really funny because it's not a Gontu, but it's Gontu adjacent, you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, just all the alien synergies is, I mean, sets him up to be the card that's like, okay, cool. I'm going to stop whatever game winning challenge that's about to happen, and now I'm just gonna lure out.
yeah. Look at all these decks with steel splashed in. Second place was an Amethyst Steel deck that kind of splashed in the Gontus. And this one makes use of the Gontus fairly well as well. In fact, oddly enough, Gontu just works in steel better than most other colors. But then this was the fourth place deck, which was Ruby M with the Gontu splashed in.
Amethyst with Gontus.
Yeah, and it actually
all of a sudden you can just curve out into something that's super aggressive. You can just go, oh man, but he doesn't have a lot of those low cost 2 lore questries and run Diablo. But you can go 1, 2, 3 Sisu, Genie, Gontu, and just like have 10 lore on board represented.
Yeah.
And like a 4/3 is not the easiest thing to get rid of.
No. Oh, the other card. Because I have to point it out. This card was bonkers in the event. I mean, giving all your stuff Challenger +2 was great, but then the fact that she could make all of your Gontus, like that 1 cost Gontu actually did a lot of work, and all of a sudden Lilo comes down on turn 3, and then that 3/3 Gontu is cracking into Willows and other things standing upright. It was great, really great synergy.
Yeah, I mean, so this is something we talked about in Amber Steel for a little bit ourselves, or even Amethyst Steel if you're running GG. Because if you swap out your 3-drop with GG and then you have Angel, Lilo just kind of becomes a pseudo answer for dogs.
Yeah, that's true. No dogs at the event, actually, oddly enough.
I mean, it turns out when you have to have 16 slots, we have 16 slots dedicated to a card that synergizes not at all with the entirety of the deck.
Yeah, when you got this guy in there, yeah. So it was fun, but it was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed getting to see the creativity of the players. And shout out to the players, the organizer, Vader, the shop, the sponsors. It was a really fun event to watch. So
that's a really cool event.
But it wasn't. And the last thing I'll say on this is I challenge all of you out there. Like, if you have a fun format that you enjoy or you think would be amusing, whether it's a franchise format or something like the Gontu Challenge or something like that, if you can throw a little prize support behind it, and there's plenty of stores and folks and people that we can connect you with too, who'd be willing to help out a little bit to get their name out there. Talk to Vader, talk to the folks behind the Glimmer Games, see what they did to pull it together. Because you could pull together an event like this, a fun local event, fairly easily. And it's a great way to kind of like, I don't know, especially if people are bored with the current formats, to kind of like reinvigorate them and give them a fun new problem to solve. So.
And you'd be surprised at what people come up with when you give them strange limitations. Like something crazy and beautiful comes out of all of these limited rule sets. And there's always somebody that's like, all right, I've been waiting for this. This is my moment.
This is my moment. Yeah, it was fun. So that is we know, Color, we know you love alternative formats. Perdita Challenge next. Only 4 versions printed. Hey, it's a lot. Anything with puppies or Dalmatians, I'm all about.
What's hold on. Keep that thought. Puppy.
Tailwagger?
No. What is
a puppy?
Oh, what's the item?
Oh, canine crunchies?
Canine crunchies.
Canine crunchies are the treat they make your eat. You could be a real dog too if you eat canine crunchies.
You have to build a duck with canine crunchies.
Yeah. And so the fun thing about the Gantu challenge, last thing on it. I know franchise decks are like a thing. And I love franchise nights. The thing is, some franchises are much better than others, and it's a different thing in this challenge. It's a different thing when you give somebody a pool of, like, let's say 30 Robin Hood cards, and you're like, or 40 or 50, or like 60 Frozen cards, and you're like, make a deck out of these 60 cards, because there's all sorts of possibilities, and that is cool. Even though it is a limited format. With the Gantu challenge, it's like, how do you take 16 cards that everybody has to play, that you know your opponents are going to play, and use those very, very specific 16 cards in the best way possible? And so it's very, very different than a lot of the other limited formats we see where players get a larger pool to solve the problem. It's, I don't know. It was fun. Anyway.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, and this is one of the things that really just continues to build not only local communities, but just kind of keeps the fire of the game alive when we have these moments of, okay, so the DLC is not coming up until Brazil. Not everybody can go to Brazil. So how are local scenes going to keep the spark for the game alive in this interim of time? Throw some good prize support behind a wacky rule set, and you'd be surprised at how many people will come out and just try to have fun.
Yeah. Agreed. And we saw that this weekend, and it was awesome. But you're actually setting us up for a good segue here, Logan, talking about Brazil. Actually, before I do that, I do want to tell everybody, you got the thumbnail was correct. We are going to talk about your favorite formats ever if you're here. We had such fun last week with the live voting of the tier list. It was a hoot. We're going to do it again this week with the formats in Disney Lorcana. So we're going to do it again. You're going to get to vote. It'll be a lot of fun. Stick around for that. We're going to do that in a little bit, because first we're going to bring in a guest that I have secretly always wanted to have on the show. And I'm always hesitant to ask folks from Europe to come on, because I don't want them to feel obligated. And it's such a hassle when we premiere it,
2 a.m. their time.
2 a.m. their time. But we did it this week. And we have a guest who I'm really excited to have on. One of the OG Lorcana content creators, I think.
Oh, 100%.
Around since almost the very beginning. And so I probably shouldn't drag this out anymore. Let's welcome in all the way from 2 a.m. Europe. It's Alphos.
Hey, what's up? I was
buddy.
Halfway in bed already.
I know. It was funny. I was telling just for the audience, we had this funny discussion this week where Harvey was like, yeah, it's 1 a.m. I can probably stay up. And we didn't take into account the time change that happened. So like this morning, Harvey was like, oof, I lost an hour.
No, literally, I was thinking like, yeah, 1 a.m. That's manageable. I crushed those. In bed by 2, easy. The moment I saw the clocks jump forward an hour, I was like, oh, what have I done?
A terrible error.
I mean, the same thing happens whenever we go through daylight savings. I always forget when it happens. And it's always a night where I decide I'm going to stay up, and then I just see the clock go. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine for me.
Yeah.
Lose an hour here or there. What's my time on this earth anyway?
Yeah. But so I have so many questions I want to ask you, so many things I want to talk about. I do want to dive into while you're here, one of the best Lorcana players and content creators out there. How many continentals are you qualified for now? Just NA, right?
NA, Europe, and Asia.
Okay, so all of them. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
There's still a couple more left to get. There's still Brazil, China, and Japan. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
Okay. So I stand by one of the best Lorcana players out there. So I do want to talk a little bit about the CCQ that happened and go through those decks, because I haven't looked at any of them. But first, you've got Brazil coming up.
Yeah, Brazil is coming up in just a little over 3 weeks,
which is wild. I can't believe it's coming up so close.
Honestly, I kind of wish it would come up sooner. After Taiwan, I was just raring to play Lorcana again. I was like, oh my, I have a whole month till I can play competitive tournament Lorcana again.
So you're both going. How I'll open this to both of you. How's prep going, and what are you all seeing in the meta? What are your thoughts on what? Now, of course, you both are going to play, so I obviously don't tip too much of your hand, but generally, what are you all seeing in the meta, and how do you think that's going to shape up over there for the first Brazilian CCQ or DLC.
I mean,
DLC,
I'll let Alpha start.
Yeah, I guess more so than Taiwan, I'm expecting an even more diverse meta. I think Taiwan was in a large way a strong reaction to Dog's dominance in the previous weeks. Whereas it feels like the meta and answers to Dogs have opened up a lot more. And, honestly, this links into like the voting you're thinking about earlier for best format. I'll put my hand down and say this is like maybe the best format of Lorcana I've ever played. Like as dominant as Dogs was at the start, I think being forced to adapt to Dogs made the meta a lot more wide and a lot more open for a large variety of decks, because in the past it was previously just like, either you have to play purple or you have to beat purple, and for a lot of the time that deck was blurple, right? And now it feels with these like two opposite axes defined as like the best raw power decks in the meta, there's a lot more space to maneuver and predict what the overall meta share is going to be and try and find a balance where you have game into both sides of that axis.
I love watching Liam's face when you see somebody talk about it. But no, that's like absolutely the way I think most of us are thinking. It's always kind of been, are we going to attack Dogs? Or are we going to attack Blurple? Because it's very hard to have something that has game into both. But if you have a relative idea or even a guess of what the meta share is, you can try to attack a room instead of just an overall set, if that makes sense. So, I mean, now we're seeing things like Emerald Sapphire become a lot more prominent in top cuts. We're seeing different tech cards in Amethyst Steel start to just become more prominent. Things that we wouldn't have seen at the beginning of Winter Spell, I think, are now starting to really shine through, because the obviously powerful things we're starting to figure out the answers for. And turns out we have a lot of natural answers to a lot of things. It's just what deck and what person is going to hit their run, right?
Yeah, I'm muting between all of your takes because it's bedtime behind me and it's not going well. And that my office is straight across from my daughter's bedroom, so it's a challenge being a parent and a content creator. Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. I love hearing the two of you talk about this. I don't get to put the reps grinding and studying it like you all do when you're playing in this kind of event. So that face you saw, Logan, was me like taking those nuggets and storing them away for the next time I do some sort of broadcast. I can whip it out and pretend I'm as smart as Harvey. But yeah, so have you all settled on what you're playing yet, or are you making that decision a lot closer to the event?
I think as much as I'd like to say, I always have it locked in weeks before. It's always like even if I have the ink combination locked in at least a week out, like the final cards are usually up to a day before, or like literally like until I have to actually submit the deck. I think there's definitely like more room towards the end of a format to actually bring a counter deck and a new type of deck, because the meta, as open as it is, the lists that are being played are way more defined and the variables are way more defined. So if you're trying to attack a general weakness you see in the meta, or the meta is progressed enough into the cycle where something that didn't work at the start or in the middle now works now because of how it's shifted. If you try and bring a rogue deck to the first event of the meta, if you tried to bring that to DLC Melbourne, you just get crushed by like random stuff because you wouldn't have had enough data to test into what you needed to test into. But as the meta gets, quote unquote, like more stale and more defined, that gives you a much better idea of the like ticks you need to hit to find a deck that can counter it, right? Like, if you're trying to play a card that's a bit out of the scope of what's considered good, but could work in specific situations, those specific situations are going to maybe be more frequent at the end of the meta than they are at the start.
I mean, he's just completely right. If you're playing any and you're seeing some rogue that, like, there's an Amber Ruby deck and like 2 or 3 variants of that have started to pop up, and it's annoyingly really good. Like it has a lot of axes that it attacks you on. There's a locations variant. There's one that plays items. There's a boost variant. There's one that just kind of, I think it plays the, what is the sandwich alien? What's his name? Ruben.
Yeah, Ruben.
Yeah,
Ruben to
ramp,
try to
the ramp alien. Yeah,
plays Ruben to try to like cheat out bigger characters faster, and like it just has a bunch of tools and things that they can do. But I'm kind of in the same boat as Alphos. Right now, I think I'm teetering between 3 different decks, and we'll see as we get closer which one just is starting to check all the boxes I personally need to hit. But it's really hard, like saying a month out, like what are we going for? Because literally, I even think the CCQ this weekend in Canada will affect some things that we see in Brazil.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, are you trying to segue us to talking about Canada? Because that's a nice one.
That'd be a good segue, yeah.
Yeah, it is always. So I've got the results up here. I haven't looked at them yet. Always enjoy seeing what's going on at the CCQs, because not that big third-party events aren't, like Charlie's and PPG and all those aren't good indicators of what's going on. But when you have the invite on the line, people generally are bringing their very best, and also in these kind of smaller fields, sometimes you have surprising things happen, like that weird aggro, like the aggro Amethyst Steel list from. Where'd Harvey go? Get back in here.
I thought I could go to sleep now.
We had a scene issue there, but you see some fun like I wouldn't call them rogue decks, but decks that are slightly different, able to top these fields if you're attacking a lot smaller of a meta. So always fun to look at. Do want to take a look at the top deck, but I do want to say, look at some of these players here: Patrick Cote, Joseph Quigley, Nicholas Bertrand, all players that we know. Looks like a pretty stacked field, to be quite honest. Tiago, that's a pretty stacked field.
Yeah, Tiago Habibi also made top 16, if I'm not mistaken.
Wild. But the deck that ended up bringing it down looks like it was this purple steel Challengers deck, which looks fairly standard. Although one Pocahontas.
Yeah, like it's really close to something that we were testing with Sailor going into Ink. Anything with Pocahontas in Amethyst Steel, Sailor lovingly likes to call Poca Steel. But I mean, this has a lot of very key changes to that. We also saw an Amethyst Steel list at the beginning of the format run binges to specifically counter Chromacons, and this does that. But now we're seeing the 4-cost Demona, which is also just another big body that handles the majority of the field. We're seeing the Steel Pluto, Fire the Cannons being just another thing that disrupts a lot of things in the meta right now. Takes out some things in Dogs, takes out the 1-drops from Blurple and Emerald Sapphire, and just disrupts a lot of game plans.
Yeah, I think the Fire the Cannons is sort of the main standout for this deck, right? Because a big weakness of the Pocahontas build was that you tried to go faster to beat Blurple, but then you'd have a lot tougher time into Dogs because all your cards, especially the post-Sailor variations, because all of your cards were a lot more vulnerable to Under the Sea. But by adding in the Fire the Cannons, you get some earlier interaction into the Dogs lines, which, in stark contrast to normally, like my opposition to being like, oh, Angel solves the Dogs matchup, is that Angel in Purple Steel specifically often comes down way too late to even be that impactful to the opening lines. Whereas, some of the Amber Steel or Blue Steel decks could turn 2 ramp into turn 3 Angel and have it be a lot more effective in disruption. But while Fire the Cannons can be a bit of a dead card and rough in other matchups, the fact that you're able to interact with the Dogs openers so early and disrupt their resources is more effective than most people realize because of how fragile Dogs lines can be to interaction.
I mean, yeah, like an early, you take out a Grandmother Willow early from a Dogs deck, and the entirety of their game plan can just fall apart. But you can also say the same thing for Blurple or Emerald Sapphire. If you take out a key Basil, or if you take out a shift target like a 1-drop Clarabelle, all of a sudden their game plan's disrupted, and you still are playing Amethyst Steel, which is just I'm going to curve out and be the consistency king of the format.
Yeah, I think that FTC was a lot more effective into Green Blue back in set 9 in Green Blue, which was before I switched to Green Blue in set 9 when I was playing Purple Steel at the start of the format. I was playing Fire the Cannons when most people thought it was a pretty bad card, and it, being able to take out the Clarabelles obviously is like very effective to disrupt their lines. I think post set 10 with Cinderella, the fact that they're able to play the Clarabelle without having it ever be exposed to removal makes that brings down the percent of that range versus their line by a solid 10%. It used to be a lot more swingy.
Absolutely agree with that. Like Cinderella, that's something Sky has talked about a lot. He's like, this card, I think, is eventually going to get banned. He saw it, and that's, really what caused Sky to go to Emerald Sapphire in general. But just like you're talking about, allowing that deck to hold the Clarabelle to be just another pseudo ramp card, because now I don't have to play it out to have the shift on this turn. Now I can just wait one extra turn, have the Clarabelle still come down, and I'm filtering out my hand to get more cards for the draw. That's why we're still seeing it in Top Guys.
Yeah.
The deck is still just that good.
I do like the toolbox approach here too. This is very Frank Karsten-esque with some of the one-ofs. As you all pointed out with the Pocahontas, allowing you to go faster, or the Tigger for some tempo. The Pluto as well, with just different tools for different situations. You also mentioned the Demona. I really, really like this Demona. I actually started seeing it pop up quite a bit around the CCS timeframe. We saw it in a number of decks down there, and it's just a house when you get it on the board, able to take out pretty much most of the big bodies on the board. And I kind of like her in that slot.
She takes out pretty much every big body that's relevant right now. She just one-shots Hades. She one-shots Clarabelle. She one-shots John Silver. Can also take out Demonas, the 6-drop Demonas. So, she's just insanely powerful for what she is coming down.
I also think, we were talking about the meta shifts earlier. The meta shift towards the end of the set has made Demona more powerful, because I was playing Demona for a bit in yellow-purple before Hong Kong. Ended up swapping to green-blue last minute. It was a big mistake. But, I still think about that in my sleep. But Demona, its main drawback, right, was that in those purple mirrors, you're getting Demona the minute staying stunned, and then in the purple steel mirror or against purple, you can't trade back after they trade into your board, so they can just treat the Demona as if it were banished already. However, with the drop in purple representation and the diversity of the meta, that makes this gargoyle text way less relevant in more matchups, making the card stronger within the context of a meta shift.
Man, I'm gonna have to go back and watch this episode and just listen to what you said 4 or 5 times, because it's all pure gold. Or chop it up into shorts. I do want to shout out quickly in the Twitter chat. We get X chat very seldom, but quickly over there, who actually played and finished, I think, top 4. I love the comment earlier saying that one of Pocahontas got me good, which is pretty funny. You all also mentioned that Chris teched against dogs. Somebody mentioned that in the chat, that was one of his goals, which pays off. You feel like you're vindicated when you run into dogs in the finals. I feel like dogs kind of, I don't know, took a back seat for a while, and now making an appearance in the top 2 here. So still relevant, still good, but not taking this one down.
I don't know that it ever took a back seat. It's just kind of like we've been talking about. People have just playing more answers. At the beginning of the format, people were kind of not respecting it enough, I think. And it definitely just got a lot of tools this set. It got Nani. It now has access to Mowgli, Grandmother Willow, just opening up the lines to throw out your Tramp 7s significantly earlier to get under the sea out earlier. It was just the very obvious powerhouse at the front, but now, kind of like we've been alluding to, every ink combination more or less has answers that can disrupt their game plan, and it turns out if you disrupt their game plan, it can be really fragile sometimes.
Yeah.
I think dogs is at the end of the day, we got to put respect on its name. It's still the first deck to win back-to-back DLCs, right? That's
sure.
literally I think never happened before in the history of this game. And a big reason because of that is like at the start of the format, people weren't respecting dogs or Chromacon, so that destroyed Melbourne. And then because of Sailor's CCQ win and winning with no Chromacon, then in Ghent, people again didn't respect Chromacon because they assumed every Dogs player would cut it to match Sailor's list, which made Chromacon more powerful. And then Zhang goes on to win with Chromacon again because there was basically no one running item hate, very few people running item hate. And the deck, again, still wasn't being respected enough because people expected it to be 10-12%, so it was kind of a hard call to tech for if you're really thinking about that meta proportion of the game. So I think even if it's not winning every single tournament as it was before, it's still like a crazy deck. And the fact that it's finally being respected despite its low meta share means even if you tech for dogs, it might still end up being a bad choice if you overly tech for it because of how few players actually play it. But if you back yourself to make top cut and dogs is one of the best decks, if not the best deck, then you can expect to have a higher top cut equity from teching for it in the top cut.
Yeah. Yep, can't say any better than that. And move on. We'll look at the last few decks. Really fascinating top four here, all different decks. We have Blurple coming in there. Blue-green, Quigley, of course, carrying that in. Dogs again in the top 8. Nicholas Beland, another fantastic player. And then Blurple and Amethyst Steel rounding it out here again. So, diverse-ish, 4 different decks in the top 8. That's not terrible. A lot of purple steel representation, though.
I mean, a lot of different cards in the top.
True.
In the top 8, I would say. Like if we look at the Amethyst Steel lists, they are not the same.
That's true.
If we look at the dogs list, I guarantee you they're not all the same. The one that got second was running the Tramp. What is it? Dapper Rascal. Which is not something you see entirely often. Obviously, this Amethyst Steel list not running Fire the Cannons. Not running Pocahontas either. So while it's kind of like we talked about before, while we're seeing ink combinations in the top, I mean the counts of cards, the different cards you're seeing, it is diverse. It's more diverse than what the ink combinations just let on. It's fair.
All right, I'm done poking around here. So shout out to the folks in Chris for winning, and shout out to the folks putting on that CCQ. A lot of great players there, and I'm sorry I missed it. Was it streaming? Like, did I miss a stream?
Yeah,
man, crazy.
I didn't realize it was an English cast because I was only looking at Twitch, and I was like, man, I kind of want to listen to this, but no French, no Francais.
Yeah. Barbaric says I was in 76th. Shout out to you for finishing 76th.
Still an accomplishment.
Yeah.
You showed up and you went to an event.
Absolutely. Before we go on to our next segment here, we're going to get close. There's something else we have to talk about that happened this week. And I know both of you are very, very focused right now on Core Constructed, focused on Brazil, not thinking a lot about Infinity, but Infinity had some news this week. Something happened, which I think most of us were expecting to come along at some point in the future, but Ravensburg announced Hiram Flauschem he's so nice, they banned him twice, and disappearing from Infinity now, as well as from Core Constructed. So, what do we... I pulled a lot of players. I have some nuggets from across the competitive spectrum. Did a video on it that nobody watched, but literally like 200 people. But what do you all think about this ban?
I would love to let Alphos go first.
Okay, well, this might be where I stop speaking with such an air of confidence because I've tested 0 Infinity.
Well,
I mean, a little thought I've had is that I have pretty good faith in the Lorcana balancing team, and I think they make really good formats. And I'm going to hazard a guess. This is completely talking out of nowhere, but I think because Infinity hasn't been tested, they really had no data to say that Haram was worthy of a ban. But I think what they might be concerned about is because the narrative surrounding Haram was so strong and that people were only going to bring Blue Steel to Infinity, that they almost put the ban in to force people to play a more diverse meta and explore other options, whereas otherwise they would just stick to the blue decks they knew, and would almost like self-impose a more like homogenistic meta because Haram had such like an unbeatable perception. Again, I haven't tested any Infinity at all, but I would be shocked that they wouldn't have banned Haram much earlier if they thought it was going to be a problem when Infinity came around, because we've had no data to like change what they would think about Infinity now compared to when they thought about it in the rotation, right? Because they already knew what cards were in the works and what were going to come out by now, right?
Yeah.
So I think that touches on a really interesting point. At the beginning of Winter Spell, there were a lot of people that, we had them on the show, Liam, where they were talking about this is the weirdest meta they've been a part of, where we all know what the strongest deck is, and a lot of people just aren't teching to beat the strongest deck. I'm kind of in that weird spot. I've played enough of Infinity. Maelstrom has tested enough of Infinity. I honestly didn't think Hiram was the problem of Infinity. Obviously, he's a very powerful card. Don't get me wrong. He always will be. Like, he's the card advantage king. But right now, there are just so many things that you can do in Infinity with all of the combinations that we have available to us. I mean, we have a lot of one-turn lore, win the game decks right now in location spam, in things like Monstro combo, and things with Sapphire Steel items where you don't need Hiram. Like, just being honest, when you take Hiram out of the deck, that just frees up more slots to put in more items to make that synergy work better. Again, like, so what Alpha was saying is kind of an interesting thought, not one that I had, but it wouldn't surprise me if that would be the case of them trying to say everybody has this idea that because Hiram allows these decks to have such wild card advantage, that they would just retroactively say, okay, before we have our DLCs, we're going to take this tool away and see what everybody comes up with kind of in the aftermath.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I made a lot of these points in my video, but which again, everybody should go watch or just, I don't know, listen to this. But so one, we have to acknowledge that Infinity, I don't want to say it's a controversial is not the right word, but the narrative around Infinity right now is that it is not supported. It hasn't been played much. It's not as fun as Core Constructed. Some people love it. I have seen some creators and some people out there saying they absolutely love Infinity. So I don't think that's the whole narrative, but there is this concern that we're going to hit these Infinity DLCs and we're going to see a very, very, I don't know, there's concern and all eyes are on these DLCs. And so there's a lot on the line because this is the first time this format is really going to have a chance to shine in a tournament of this size. Or in tournaments of these size. And so you can understand them being protective. And I think, kind of to sum up what both of you were saying is Hiram wasn't necessarily, like the team, I suspect, didn't necessarily think Hiram was too good. They thought he was too risky. And rather than risk that narrative of, the format is unhealthy because everybody brought these blue steel decks and Hiram's everywhere, 16 out of the top 32 decks are playing, Hiram's in them. They just, acted proactively. The other piece is Hiram on his own is garbage. Hiram is great because you have Popsicle, because you have Fortisphere, and because you have other low-cost items which you can eat. I'm not saying this factored into their decision, but Hiram is just going to get better with time. And the dev team knows a lot more about what's coming in the next few sets than we do. And at some point, as the game goes on, as more low-cost items are printed and as item synergy, as new items get better and better, Hiram would become a problem. The same way that Bucky was totally fine until they printed Floodborn, which you can play on turn 2 for cheap. So like, if the ban's coming eventually anyway, probably better to just get it out of the way before the challenge. And and see what happens.
I mean, I would argue Bucky was not fine before Diablo. He was still arguably one of the strongest cards. I mean, Emerald Steel was the deck that everybody on Maelstrom, like I think it was me, RMB, and Lorcana Bro at the time, for anybody who remembers that name. Like, that's what we were playing when that set first came out, Ursula's Return, because Bucky was just so good. Like, you could just disrupt anything. You didn't need Diablo with the Bucky, but as soon as we got Diablo, it just made him even more egregious.
Yeah, I will admit, at a Rockstar set champs, I lost the promo to getting milled by a Bucky Tiberius Rook green steel deck, so I can definitely attest to some of its power. But I also got to say, like, in regards, like, you know, you said for like quote unquote controversy around like the feelings around the Infinity DLC, I've never been more glad to already be qualified, because I was really unsure about being able to find an edge into a format that's so untested.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like, shout out to teams like Maelstrom, World Class Card, Rare Hunters. Like, you guys really have like the the manpower, like the volume of testing with a lot of people to be able to, I think, test unexplored waters more effectively than like the smaller testing groups I tend to be a part of. Like, I think that like difference in information access is going to be really big for these Infinity DLCs.
I mean, it's just when you work as a group. I mean, when you have 8 people, obviously you have the ability to run more games than somebody who doesn't, right? When all 8 of us get together and seriously sit down for a night and we're like, all right, for 4 hours, this is what we're doing, and we record all of it and see how things go. I mean, you're just able to churn out a lot more ideas and just talk through lines. And like, I mean, there have been times we've stopped doing what we're doing and everyone looks at one board state. We just open hand discuss, like, okay, well, what happens if you do this? What happens here? And having that many minds, like, I'm very, very blessed and thankful to have the friends and, I mean, just teammates that I do. I would not be, you know, anywhere near where I am in the game without them. But I mean, I encourage everybody, especially, you know, if that's something you feel like you're lacking, like your local game scene is where you need to start. I'm sure Alpha can attest to that. Like, that's how I met, coincidentally, all of the people I know. Like, I started at whatever local scene I was at. It happened to be Kentucky at the time. And from there, they hooked me up with Discords. And from there, it was just to the moon. Here we are almost 3 years later.
Yeah, you bring up actually a really cool point with the local game scene, because I feel like I for a while, like especially in between the seasons, I was a bit disconnected to my local game scene, because unless I was preparing for an upcoming tournament, like I wasn't that into playing Lorcana casually every week. But recently, like some of like my local scene, you know, they kind of reached out to me before Ghent, saying like they really wanted to like improve and like try and like push themselves for Ghent. And we did, me and Justice, we did like a push where we tried to get more UK players who were trying to be competitive to like start testing, and we like made this little UK testing Discord. And then we ended up putting, I want to say 5 or 6 people into Top Cut out of like this UK testing group, which was just like an insane number. And half of those people were people that like had never top cut a DLC before, and they like for the first time were like hopping in cool, discussing. We were having like, you know, similar to like how the lounge does it, having like meetings around different decks and what we were doing. And I think it was really cool to see like players that I knew personally that, you know, would only go as far as like, you know, driving around to a few set champs, show up to like 1 or 2 DLCs a year in their local area to like really push themselves to compete. And like, while I'm not like the best like show up every week, have a chat, you know, kind of casual player, because I've got like a sick thing in my brain where I need to be competitive. But, you know, being able to like get my local scene involved into like where my element and like being competitive and training and practicing was like really, really cool to see. It's exactly what you said. Like, a lot of people are capable of being competitive. They just need the environment that like supports them and the people around them to like push them to be so.
that took a great segue from the band, but it's great. I mean, it's a fantastic point. What is interesting, like there are so many players out there who you see at a lot of these events who are constantly on the edge of top cuts or just, you know, doing very well in all the DLCs or third party events, who are like solo players and who might have, you know, some locals that they play with, but there's so many people who are just a team support away from being like incredibly consistent top cut performers. If they could just find that, you know, that support group. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So we are 8:45. I was gonna send you this note in the private chat, Alphos, but I'm just gonna. Do you want to hang out for this next segment? Do you need to go? It is late. How are you? Are you close to face?
Yeah. Well, what's like the time estimation? I could go like another 30, I think.
Okay, that's probably good.
Perfect.
We can do that because we're gonna move on to our next segment here. By the way, if you haven't watched my video on, no, never mind. Don't watch it. You just heard it. This is much more insightful than what I said. All right. So we're going to move on to our next segment here. And to kind of close the show out, we did a thing last week. For the first time ever, I figured out how to do this tier list live vote function, and it was a hoot. And I loved it. So we're going to do it again because I left that show last week, Logan, and I was like thinking about the next thing we could possibly do. And I was looking through tier maker and I was like, oh, what else could we do live? And then you like 5 minutes after I started digging through stuff said, hey, Dave Solberg just did this really cool tier list on the best Disney Lorcana metas that have existed and ranked them, and it started conversation and people loved it. And so we both had, or you had the idea, hey, let's bring Dave in here. Let's just run it back and do what we did last week again, but with Dave's amazing list. And let's invite Dave. So we did invite Dave, and he's going to join us here right now. Hey, Dave.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, thanks for hanging out and waiting
for having me
for the segment. Really fun. So we looked at your list. We're not going to show your list because we're all going to build your tier list again, but first we're going to get the audience votes. But before we do that, what was your, like, why did you create this list now?
I spend basically every free second thinking about Lorcana, and sometimes a thought just, you know, gets wedged in there and I got to pull on it. And the conversation started with how good was this metagame, the current one, the Winter Spell metagame. And when I was talking with our friends, it was like we thought it was consensus top two, tied with one other, which I'll let the community vote on before I spoil the best one.
Okay. Better than this one. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's maybe. I mean, by the end, we have one more DLC, right? And so, like, if Brazil
fair.
comes and goes, I don't know if there's any more CCQs. Maybe there are in this format. But like, if another deck like Red Yellow comes out and spikes the Brazil DLC and really turns it on its head, that would be quite interesting.
That would be another like Amber Steel climbs out of the woodworks.
Yeah, something cool. But so anyway, that's how it got started. And I like, there's social media it's pretty easy to run with like negative stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we ban Hiram, devs don't know what they're doing. There's no data support, whatever. But I actually think they're just cooking, like outside. Reign of Jafar was a great metagame. Fable, post rotation, small set, lots of reprints. That was like kind of a miss. But then I thought Whispers in the Well is like in my personal list was also at the very top. And then if they can keep doing this, the sky's the limit for this game.
I agree. Well, here's what we're gonna do. Before we talk too much more about it, because I'm interested in all of your opinions, and Logan, I know you may have to leave it a little early, so we're just gonna get this rolling. So at the very least, you can see the vote. This is what it looks like. I need everybody who wants to vote live. I'll give you another couple seconds. Click on the link I just posted. You should get access to this. I'm gonna hit play, and then I have it set to 30 seconds per one because we did 15 last week, and it was a lot of fun, but it flew by, and people said they wanted more time. So we're gonna do that, which means we might have to chat a little bit as each set comes up. Which will be fun because as each set comes up, we can talk about what we remember. Oh, Dave disappeared. Hold on. Come Come back,
That's
Dave.
the scene change again.
I know. I
Doing the scene
know.
change.
I'm back.
Yeah, Dave on camera, Adam, yeah. So we'll have to talk a little bit about our memories and make sure that we're we're reminding people what happened in these metas, because I'm not gonna lie, you're all gonna have to help me. I remember when the Toronto thing happened, but I forget when the Hiram ban happened, what set that was. So
Yeah, I didn't even play the
That was
Hiram Band
set
set, so
4.
I have no opinion of that set whatsoever.
all right. Well, I'm
Dave will keep us all on track.
Yeah,
That's
so that
true.
was a North American DLC only meta. So if you didn't go to Toronto, you just moved on to Shimmering Skies. The interesting thing about it is that the Sunday competitive constructed side event at Toronto was Shimmering Skies, and not Ursula's Return.
that's so
So like
funny.
you got to move on to the new format if you didn't make day 2.
Yeah, it's like that chapter's closed for you.
Yeah, like, dude, it was weird. Season 1, we had those pseudo moments where sometimes you'd be stuck in one format while another format was actively out. And some people was just like, okay, I'm stuck on this DLC. I have to wait. But then like a whole other section of the community was like, no, we're already playing with new cards. Visions of the Future is really cool.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna hit play so we get this in before Luke goes. It says 5 ready. I hope there are more of you in there, but at the very least 5 of you will get to vote. Just a reminder: the red on the left is the best meta, and the green is, please don't make me play that again. So green is not necessarily good in this scenario, but here we go. Let's see how this goes. So first chapter, this was Ruby Amethyst heyday, or like initially burst on the scene as the best deck, I think. I was living large with Emerald Amethyst, which I think was the best deck. I'll just leave that there. Also, you had Turquoise, like the high 5 running around.
Oh, I also played Emerald Amethyst set 1. That was my first ever YouTube video. It was an Emerald Amethyst deck in set 1.
Awesome.
Amber Sapphire was my favorite deck in set 1.
Amber Sapphire? Really?
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
like
it was
blue,
the
yellow,
Hades-
just-in-time princesses?
No, it was just blue, yellow ramp. It had a really good red purple matchup, and it was very bad in Amber Steel. But I like beating red purple. So.
I was about to say, it was the Hades loop that just beat Ruby Amethyst because they play one character and you're just like, cool, play Hades.
The Amber Hades.
Yep.
Was, you just kept getting them back.
Oh, yeah. The uninkable one. Oh,
yeah.
What a fun card.
And we moved on to Winterspell now. For some reason, from the first to the most recent set, and everybody seems to like that one.
I mean, like, it's legitimately the healthiest the game has been in a minute, in my opinion. I think Dave also thinks that.
Yeah, I do think, as the chat is saying, Whispers in the World deserves to be in the same tier as Winterspell, but I think Whispers in the World was a great set. It's gone down, though.
Oh, no. Some people coming in. I don't know if they're changing their votes or if people are just coming in the last minute. But 4 seconds left. We have 20 voters on this one, 21. And I think perhaps people just think Winterspell deserves to stand on its own at the top of the pyramid.
Fabled is created instantly.
This one was hard. If we had post rotation and it was actually with a 5th set, I think Fabled would be looked upon pretty positively. The problem is we rotated in a set that had 30 new cards and the rest were reprints, and so like wasn't a new set. It was like just Hades and Bell and Under the Sea.
I think one of the biggest problems, we went from like the most powerful individual cards were to going back to like what almost felt like set 1-esque power levels as far as just what answers you had for things. And in some instances, people just kind of felt bad.
Yeah, I think it was also just like a matter of expectations. Like you'd been away from the game for so long that Fabled, which was honestly like a pretty okay and fairly diverse meta for what it was in comparison to most other sets. Like, you know, you just wanted to play good Lorcana again because it was the first time we got to play DLCs again, and then to be left with, you know, a pretty meta made it feel worse than it was.
Yeah, I think that
real quick on Azure IC that we went past. This was the Continentals format. We passed that now.
Great format, actually.
Shimmering Skies. This is set 5, so this is like Vegas meta. Sorry for the EU folks if you're still awake. I don't know what DLCs were what meta game over there.
Shimmering Skies was Birmingham was the same weekend as Vegas, I believe. Yeah. I played a green-yellow Kida Under the Sea, and luckily the American Green Steel hadn't caught on yet in EU because it was the same weekend, so that deck survived for at least that DLC after Toronto.
And then Toronto was Ursula's Return, sans Bucky, which turns out was like really interesting because you take Bucky out of the format and all of a sudden Amber Emerald discard becomes incredibly powerful. But then like Ruby Sapphire's natural predator just kind of goes away. So that deck gets to do its thing pretty consistently.
Yeah, Toronto was actually the first DLC I'd ever predicted the winner of, like weeks before. The moment I saw the Bucky ban, I was like, Yellow Green's going to win Toronto.
Fascinating.
Yeah, Toronto meta, I think everybody that played in it looks back on it quite fondly. But had we played it for a second week and we were after level 9,000, Diego won with green yellow, I don't think anybody would like it.
And then Ursula's Return, the joy and rise, and I mean just pinnacle
Bucky,
of
Sisu,
Bucky.
Diablo, just the worst of everything.
No.
Yeah.
Just the worst.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, actually.
It's fun. This meta I loved.
Into the Inklands is another just really, gosh, this was the time of Ruby, Amethyst. Are we playing Surfer Mini Wars?
No, this is the best.
No. This was the widest meta.
This is
was
the
when
number
no one knew how
one
to
meta
play.
the game's ever had.
No, I absolutely agree. You had everything from